Good evening, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting of the Water Commission to order at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, January 17th. We're all present. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, that brings us to item number 4, citizen comment period. Guess when we're good. Move on to item number 5, business items. First one we have is the approval of the minutes for November 15th Water Commission regular meeting. So are there any corrections to the minutes on the right? Any corrections on the left? All right, no corrections to the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve?
I have a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you. Unanimous approval of the minutes. Excuse me. That brings us to discussion reports and updates. The first thing up is Utility Department monthly activity report. Stephen, over to you, please.
Good evening. For the month of December, in Edwards, we pumped 37.85 acre feet, which brought our year-to-date of 468.15 acre feet, with a remaining at the end of the year of 9.62 acre feet. Currently, Edwards is still in stage 3. The J17 is, as of today, is 636.4. So they're still in stage 3. Hopefully we'll get some rain next week or maybe tomorrow even. All monthly distribution samples passed. Our water loss went up a little, up to 6.5%, which is still way under the national average. We installed 1 new meter. We replaced 2 meters. Total meters read was 1,701. Total work orders was 322, locates 27. For AMI information, total AMI notifications was down 268. Automatic drafts was the same. AMI customer portals was up 7. E-billing customers was up 4. Abnormal usage was down 112. Continuous flow was up 28. Leak info code was up 21. Usage trend was down 73. December alerts down 131 from November. And that's all I have really to report for the month of December.
Thank you, sir. A couple of things I'd like to point out real quick. First of all, a great job on managing the water over the course of the year. Appreciate your attention to that and working through it. I think, if I remember correctly, we gave back about over 170 acre feet. And I think, if I remember correctly, that we stand to lose, since we're starting off the year in stage 3, there's potential to lose up to 30% of our allotment from the Edwards Aquifer this year. Just to highlight those facts and let everybody know that this drought is pretty serious and not letting up anytime soon.
Yes.
All that checks. All right. Any questions for Stephen on the right?
Yes.
On the left?
With the freeze we had in December, did that cause a lot of your leak codes or incidences?
We pretty much, for that couple days that it was cold, we had maybe about 25 calls to service for basically turning off people's water out in the field. We basically, for that time, we ran the wells on about every 2 hours. We turned them on just to keep water flowing so nothing would freeze up in our system. Even though we had them really wrapped, all the pipes on all the well sides wrapped really well, and we actually had heat tape also and valves wrapped as a precaution. Well, running the water, it was a precaution because we just didn't really want to have to fix anything, but I think it would have held even if I didn't. But so we just did a little extra to make sure things went smoothly.
Thanks, Commissioner Stone. That's a great question, and good to hear all the stuff that y'all are doing. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to move to B2, items applicable to the Water Commission discussed at the December and January City Council regular meetings. First of all, the main thing we had in the December council meeting was the water rate presentation. Vice Chair Harshberger got up there and did his usual awesome work that everybody noticed. Lots of compliments from City Council. Thank you, sir. And overall, his recommendation was approved unanimously to, how do I say this right? Freeze the rates for 1 year or maintain the same rates for the next year. So, yeah, good job. Other items that were applicable there, I think that was it for the December meetings. I'm scrolling through my notes. Okay, in the January meeting, just a side note for everybody that 3 new police officers were sworn in, which was pretty cool to see our police force with a significant increase in personnel. The city bond rating went up to AA, which was pretty awesome. We went through the water report. I think we covered a lot of stuff that was in there. Good. The hard freeze, we talked about the systems. The mayor did thank all the citizens for their water conservation and for the water utilities for the efficient use of all our resources over the course of the last year. And it was mentioned that there is another sort of a neutral pattern this year as what folks are forecasting. An average year perhaps, but that would be a welcome change compared to the last few drought years that we've had. But we're going to be in water restrictions until further notice. I think something that's big here, we have a new commissioner sitting up here today, Mr. Pohl. Thank you very much for volunteering. He went through the interview board and then was approved by the city council at the January meeting, and we really appreciate you being here, sir. Thank you for volunteering. Anything for the whole group?
Nothing. Glad to be here. Hope to serve.
All right, I think that is everything that I have in my notes for the meetings. First of all, Vice Chair, anything from the December meeting?
No, I think you covered it all. There wasn't a whole lot else to add.
Ms. Kane, anything I'm missing? You covered it. Okay. Any questions on the left this time? Nope, all good? On the right? Great. Let's move on now to 5C, recommendations. The first item we have under 5C is the water pressure regulations. Review and make possible recommendations to water pressure regulations. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, sir, that's something I've been interested in, and I don't know if that's even something even worth entertaining the question would be to you if that's something that we could do and still meet the firefighters. Since we do have such high pressure, which we all love the high pressure, but it does cause the leaks. And when we get into inside the house, code is saying you got to have a water pressure reducing valve to keep it below 80 PSI. And when you have insurance for stuff like that, the first thing they test is the pressure. So can it be done at the city level? But like having a pressure reducing valve added. And I know these are very large pipes and that might be expensive for something like that. Or is that just something out of the question?
We used to have some on Garden North and Park Lane because there's the pressure plane is really high because it's lower than the elevations are so low over there compared to the bottom of our tank. Like our pressure at our shop is like 62 PSI. So anything from that on down is going to get higher unless you have a pressure plane that's level with the bottom of our water tank. We did do away with those two pressure reducing valves on those two streets because basically everybody had pressure reducing valves. Putting those in would probably run $5,000 to $10,000 each probably to install those. And we'd have to come up with, we could probably have to do several areas within the city to install those.
Do
But
you
then
think-
once the pressure past the pressure reducing valve, then the person that's right past that pressure reducing valve would probably have low pressure, and then it would just have to equal it out to the bottom of the hill, so to speak, to try to find out what would be an ideal pressure for the farthest reaching end of that high pressure plane.
In general, do you think it's a good idea worth pursuing, or is it just with the issues that you've talked about, and is it something we just rely on everybody? Because, I mean, everybody wants high pressure. I like high pressure, and just getting it down in your house to make sure everybody's aware that 80 PSI, your warranties are going to start getting voided. And this is everywhere, but a lot of, it's just part of the code. But is that a good idea in your eyes, or is it not really what we really way to tackle
It
this?
didn't seem to work out when we had them before. It just seemed to be more of a problem because there's so much little things in those that, for one thing, it's an extra leak point that could be in the system. Then we'd have to put in a vault, and there's a lot to it to get those working. But we just never had any really positive results out of having those two there.
Thank you. That's good to know. That's, kind of, I think I probably brought that up, but that was just my question, if it made sense to even look at it. But I appreciate your feedback.
You're welcome.
So, sir, do you think comfortable with the utilities recommendation and sort of holding off on this?
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other comments from any other commissioners?
Just ask, my recollection may be incorrect, but it used to be the case that we had at least one customer within the city limits that the pressure was too low in the system because of where they were located, slightly below the minimum threshold. Is that still correct, or has that been fixed?
Only low pressure areas I know of is there's parts of Tuscan Hill and parts of Bat Cave that are around 60, 70 PSI. But it's maybe 4 or 5 houses, if I can remember correctly. But I haven't really had any issues with them saying anything. I do remember back when they were being built, I'd have a conversation with the home builder, upset having to install a pressure reducing valve when the normal pressure was below that of 80.
And then a follow-up, do you know about how many customers are in the high-pressure area? 100 PSI or greater?
I would say probably, just off the top of my head, I would have to say probably 85 to 90%.
That's above 80, right?
Yes.
So is there anything that's way out the limit other than the ones you mentioned in the Garden North area?
I know the highest pressure we have in the city, is at the very back end of Wild Wind, and off the fire hydrant, we got about 140 PSI.
All right, I just wanted to get a sense of what the variability was. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Stephen, would you repeat that? Was it 140 or 104?
140.
Okay, that's what I thought. Because I think I'm about 110 at my house or so.
Any other questions? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to item C2, drought watering restrictions. And this is a discussion about ordinance 61. So this was brought up in a city council meeting. And we had a customer that was wondering about our watering times. specifically the morning watering times, which right now are 4 to 8 a.m., as you can see in Ordinance 61 that is in your package. And that's pretty consistent, the 4 to 8 a.m. and then 8 to 12 p.m. And this customer is actually asking, said it was a kind of a burden because they did not have a irrigation system, so they had to go out there between 4 and 8 a.m. and move their water hose around, which makes sense. And I went ahead and looked into this and had a few discussions with Councilmember Valdez about this also, and Ms. Kane also on this, and thought that perhaps a couple courses of action here. First of all, looked at sort of got the history behind this and why it is where it is, and then what might be a better course of action as we go through here. The bottom line, this is to encourage conservation and make sure that when we're in drought restrictions, that we don't water during the hottest part of the day, so we put some timing on there. That 4 to 8 a.m. was selected because, watering in the morning before the ground heats up is what you want to go ahead and do. Looking at other areas around here, there's some variability about when different cities allow watering during droughts, and a little bit of that variability in some of the papers that are out there. Read some stuff from Texas A&M and from the Texas Water Conservation something, I can't remember but it was a part of the state of Texas. But the point being on all of this is when we looked at saws, the saws times are in stage 1, it is before 11 a.m. and after 7 p.m. And then in stages 2 and beyond, your watering times are allowed between 7 and 11 in the morning and 7 and 11 at night. I think this is probably a good mix of working with our customers and allowing a good block of time and encouraging conservation and watering during the not the hottest part of the day. Also, aligning with saws helps out because I think what our customers will see on the news and everything like that will match what's in our ordinance. So with all this and thinking about all of this, we've got a couple of courses of action here. We can recommend an ordinance change to the city council to change that ordinance to match the SAWS information that I just relayed to y'all. But of course, I'm not opposed also if somebody wants to double check my work and dig into this some more and do some research, I'm also open to that also. So that's enough of my monologue. I'm going to go ahead and pause here and see what questions we have. Starting on the left.
Can you go over the SAWS hours again, 7 a.m. to 11 a.m.?
Yes, sir. So in stage 1, the restriction is before 11 a.m. and after 7 p.m., which if you look at you can compare that to the ordinance 61 that you have in front of you. And then when we move into stage 2 and beyond, their times are 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. So everything's a 7 or 11.
Before 11 and after 7?
In stage 1, that is correct. In stage 2 and beyond, it is between 7 and 11.
Seven p.m. and 11 a.m.?
Okay. In stage 1, the watering restriction is after 7 p.m., you can start watering until 11 a.m. So after 7 p.m. and before 11. In stage 2 and beyond, it is the only times you are allowed to water is from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. So for example, on your monitors right there, what you're looking at, if you're looking at paragraph 2, this is stage 1 there, paragraph 2, we would change that to, we can say it either way, after 7 PM and before 11 AM is how SAWS says it, or we can say between 7 PM and to 11 AM. That's stage 1. If you could scroll to stage 2 for us. If you look at paragraph 2 for stage 2, instead of saying 4 AM to 8 AM, it would say 7 AM to 11 AM. And then instead of 8 to 11, it would say 7 to 11. That's the change I'm proposing, if y'all are okay with that. Questions on the right?
Well, I mean, the first comment is there's a couple other places where we mentioned additional times. We'd have to make sure we scrub those. Second issue is, I do think it makes sense to rationalize these times. Some of our narrowing windows later, like as our stages go up and we narrow the times, doesn't really make sense, because as long as it's during the hours of darkness, or at least cooler time of the day, the evaporative losses are roughly the same. So I don't see that it does much to shorten the window other than to narrow the time people can do things. So I have no objection to that in principle. The 7 to 11 a.m., you know, getting close to 11 a.m. is starting to be where there's a little bit more evaporative losses. And so I'm not sure if matching saws is completely what we need to do, since our customers have a majority of irrigation equipment where the losses are going to be higher anyway. Having said that, since we put these restrictions in place, we've got much more marginal rate increase at the higher consumption levels, and there's the surcharge on top of that. So I wonder how much of it is effective anyway, as far as conservation goes. So bottom line, I don't have an objection in principle. I just don't know if matching saws is an overwhelming priority, but having a little wider window during the day probably is a good idea. So 4 a.m. to, 8 a.m. doesn't really provide people who don't have automatic systems much of an option. So I do agree with that. I just don't know. I think we might need to think a little bit about, do we really want to go to 11 a.m.?
You're volunteering yourself to do the study, you know that, right?
I'll just take them out altogether and just have a higher rate. That's what I do.
Great points on the time. I like that. I wasn't as concentrated on the hours. Some of the times, and just me personally, it's the days, and I assume the days are in there, so there's some sort of enforcement of, obviously, somebody's out there doing it every day, but, I honestly, I like the idea of having a little bit of flexibility in there. It's going to rain on my watering day, and that should be sufficient anyway, but, it just, I would like to have that flexibility, if possible, of different watering days, and I definitely agree with Commissioner Harshbarger about the rates of covering when the high usage. That being said, I just don't, maybe I should know the answer to this. We keep getting water pulled away from us. I don't want us to run out of water either, and how all that fits in, I don't really have a good grip on, but I like the idea of doing it rate-based in my eyes, but I do like the hours of don't go out there at noon and water at noon. Just my personal thoughts on it right now, and that takes away the enforcement, though, and I understand that. So, just my 2 cents.
All right, we have a recommendation for further study, and we have a recommendation for a change. So we have to pick something at this point.
I'm not sure if I'm supportive of a change in the hours, or if we do change the hours, matching saws. If we're going 12 to, it says 12 to 10, and that's what I'm reading, AM? And then 8 to 12, those to me seem sufficient. And like it or not, the days are getting hotter. And so the time that we reach a level of evaporation is going to move up. So I don't know about changing the hours, a rate-based approach, because I totally agree with the other commissioners. We need to conserve water. It's a limited resource, and it's kind of precious.
I will say that, it sounds like you're recommending no change of the hours. I will say the most conservative information that I found on there recommended watering before 9 a.m. I didn't see anything that recommended earlier than that in the research that I did. So I think 4 a.m. to 8, my personal opinion is that 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. is unnecessarily conservative based on everything that I've read, but happy to bring that up and get a subcommittee to dig into it.
Realize it's just for input, but I would be interested to hear what the water manager thinks, if he has an opinion.
I think further study would be a good thing, because I know during the summer when it was at its hottest and the irrigation was at its peak, there would be times where we would kind of take a breath because the wells were like running so long throughout the night, because everybody would generally turn their wells on at, or sprinkler systems on at about 12 a.m. And then you'd see the wells basically struggling, or not struggling, but just running nonstop up into a certain point in the morning, and that's when they'd be able to actually catch up without us having to turn everything on at once. Because we do like to give the well sites a little bit of rest in between cycles. So I think we could probably look back at SCADA graphs and see what kind of analysis we can do just from what the data shows, and see if that would make a good, if it would impact it any.
Okay, I don't think we need a motion for this, but I think that looking for a consensus opinion on this, to go ahead and have the ordinance subcommittee go ahead and work with the utilities department to look at the demand side of this and possibility of if these hours are correct, or if we can have some, or if we could change them to make them a little bit better for our citizens. Is that fair for everyone?
And that brings up a good point to me of why these are days now then, so everybody doesn't pick Wednesday then. So I get it, and I would withdraw what I said about changing the days after hearing that. So I don't think we should touch it. So I'd like to take back, I no longer recommend that.
No worries, thank you. Does this sound like a good course of action then, what I just mentioned for both of y'all? Okay. On the left? Good to take a look at it? Nods from everyone? Okay. We good with that? Okay. Thank you, everyone. That closes recommendation item C2. So we could go ahead and move on to Water Commission activities and reports. All right, running through here, first of all, we have ops planning for Commissioners Halterman and Carmichael. Anything we need to discuss there, gentlemen? Dr. Carmichael?
Planning on, I'm sorry,
Ops planning, the subcommittee that you guys are on.
nothing on ops planning, I believe, but we did meet and discuss the issue of funding or funds in lieu of bringing water to the city. And we've had preliminary discussions on that.
Can you share with everybody?
I don't know, I learned a lot. I think maybe Jim Hall.
No, I really enjoyed that discussion that we had. It's been a while, and I hadn't thought about it. And we had talked before this, I'd like to get us together again and maybe have something ready more for next meeting when we can. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, got it. I think we talked about ordinances enough, unless there's anything, Vice Chair, okay? Education Subcommittee, Dr. Carmichael, anything on that one?
No, until I get another member, maybe.
Which brings up a great point. We have a new commissioner, and we have an opening on the Education Subcommittee. What do you think, Mr. Pohl?
Yeah, yeah, I'd be glad to serve. Don't quite know what the education component is, but be glad to help out. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Sorry about the ambush. We talked about water rates. I don't think there's anything. Take a break on water break. Got it. And then strategic planning, I don't have anything to add for strategic planning. Okay. Okay, that runs us through Water Commission activities and projects. Is there anything else? Oh, no, I think that's it. Am I missing anything?
I don't know if we missed it, I don't know if there's any update, because I don't even remember which committee it's under now, but where's the master plan at? Do we have any updates on that?
That is strategic planning. We don't have any updates, but Stephen, do you know the status of the master plan? That you said something before, I can't remember.
No, I don't have any updates.
Okay. We'll get that for next time. Anything else on the right? On the left? Any questions? All right. That moves us to item 5D, future agenda items. We're looking for commissioners' input on the agenda items, not a discussion, just an input on what we should bring up. And the next one, we will cover the master plan inside of the Water Commission activities and projects. But I'd like to add an agenda item based on the discussion we had for funding in lieu of discussion. Go ahead.
Yes, no, totally agree.
Okay. Any other future agenda items on the left? No? Future agenda items on the right?
Don't know how, when, or how quickly, but with a new commissioner, it's probably time to revisit the security and tour special meeting at some point.
Okay, I'll take a note on that. I'll talk to Stephen and Ms. Kane and see when we can get something like that scheduled. I know we've been talking about it.
Well, we're jumping in. Do we have an update on the sewage system? Be just curious as to where we stand at that and if it's working and so on.
Would you like to take that one, ma'am? Or you want me to take a stab at it?
No, I can take that. The sewer system that the city installed is installed and it's ready for usage. We just do not have a customer yet.
I thought all the people up and down the road, the commercial entities at least had to tie into that system.
They will, if they're not currently on a septic system. So all new commercial will have to tie into the system. But at this point in time, we do not have any new commercial since we have completed the system.
So we grandfathered all the existing?
If they currently have an existing septic system, they get to stay on that until that system fails. And then if that system fails, they'll have to tie into the city's wastewater system.
Is this a future agenda item, or are we trying to discuss this out of order on the agenda?
We'll put it as a future agenda item. We'll move on. Any other agenda items? All right. The date, time, and location of the next meeting is here, February 21st at 6 p.m., right here in City Hall. And are there any citizen comments? All right. That's it for the agenda. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So move.
A second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye. And this Water Commission meeting is adjourned at 6:36 p.m. Nope.